Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. The New Jersey Devils will play the Carolina Hurricanes on Easter Sunday to open up their respective playoff series. Let me just say, time does not heal the wound. The pain is still there. The Devils are looking to beat the Hurricanes this year. Revenge, rematch, remix. Joining me on today's episode to help preview the series is Zach Martin over at Locked On Hurricanes. There's a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey and also Carolina? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils and Locked On Hurricanes podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils Rider Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member Trey Matthews, joined alongside Zach Martin, the host of Locked On Hurricanes, also one of the hosts of the Surgecast and a credentialed media member for the Hockey Writers. Zach, it's finally arrived. The 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs, and we got a rematch from the 2023 second round series. The New Jersey Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes. First and foremost, Zach, how you doing?
Trey, I am really good. You already got me hyped, and we're still like a few days away from game one on Sunday, but honestly feeling really good. It's crazy to think that the seasons are pretty much done now, and now we're looking at playoff hockey. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting. We haven't seen each other in a couple playoffs. Now we get to do it in round one instead of round two. And then even then you're looking back to like 2009. It was like the last matchup before the last one. So it's been a bit. But, Canes Devils, it's going to be a lot of fun. And let me ask you before we jump into all this, how are you feeling tonight?
I am feeling great. Let me just say, nothing can kill my vibe because
yes, sir.
The goal for the Devils was to get back to the playoffs. They missed the playoffs last season. So the goal with Sheldon Keefe at the helm, playoffs or bust, anything else is gravy. So I am satisfied with how the season has gone, especially with what the Devils have had to endure. And we're definitely going to talk about it as this episode progresses. But let's start with the storylines, because I think both teams have some juicy storylines heading into this matchup. I got to ask you, I don't mean to rehash the past, but I got to ask you, what happened with Mikko Rantanen and the Martin Necas trade?
Well, I think initially you kind of look at it is, at the time you thought that you had Martin Necas who was having a really great season. You just signed him to his 2-year contract just that off season before, and you thought, okay, maybe we can get an upgrade here. Maybe if you want really great players, Trey, as you guys got Timo Meier, you have to give up to get something. You have to give up something to get a high quality guy back. So that's what the Hurricanes did. They took a shot, and I guess there was some miscommunication on whatever camp was going on in terms of the initial deals. And he gets here, you let him settle in, you give him here's an extension. It's just sounded like he didn't really want to work out. He wanted to play for certain teams. And in the end, it just didn't really work out. The Hurricanes took a swing for it because a lot of fan bases want to see their teams take a swing. The Hurricanes did. But in the end, you got a surprise guy in Taylor Hall who's been playing really well. And you got Logan Stankoven plus picks. So, was it a smooth transition? I wouldn't say no, but at least you tried, and in the end, you got some guys who, I guess been playing really well for the Hurricanes, and you got some draft capital. So, it's one of those situations where, hey, it's hockey, things happen, it's weird.
All right, that's in the past now. The Hurricanes back in the playoffs. Can they make some noise? What are some of the more positive storylines heading into this series?
I would say definitely if you're looking at more positive storylines. I mean, Seth Jarvis having another great season for the Hurricanes, set a new career high in assists with 35, tied his point total while missing 7 games this season, and leads the team in goals with 32, tied for first in the NHL with shorthanded markers, at least with 5, and he's been playing really well. I mean, Taylor Hall's kind of have I don't think he's like MVP New Jersey Devils Taylor Hall, but at least you're getting somewhere closer to like a Boston Bruins, pop off here, Taylor Hall, and that's just with the limited time he's been here. 4 power play goals, got the power play somewhat back rolling again and stuff like that. Plus, you got Mark Jankowski, who's really surprised a lot of people. Had 4 goals with Nashville, comes over to Carolina, already popped off for 8, and adding some depth, and you're just seeing some. A lot of people kind of thought the Hurricanes were going to drop off, but they pushed and got second going into the playoffs. So it's definitely interesting for sure. And there are some good positives. They got a lot of guys that they got locked up, and now you're looking at a possible reload this offseason. Trey, let me ask you, what are the positives for the Devils coming into this thing?
Well, first and foremost, I'm glad that Taylor Hall is doing well with the Hurricanes. I love to see that. He's a fan favorite in Jersey. I know it didn't end all that well, but I think a lot of people wanted to see Taylor Hall come back to New Jersey. He's back in the Metro, just not with the Devils. And he's been bouncing from team to team ever since he was traded to the Coyotes, the Sabres, the Bruins, the Blackhawks.
It's really weird. It's really weird for a first overall to jump around that much. And you even heard him too.
Former MVP too.
Right, exactly. Because you hear him talk about what chaos. He's ready to just settle down and be done with it. And if it's Carolina or somewhere else, he just wants to be like, all right, this is it. This is home. We're done until, because he's 33. I think you have to feel for the guy, because you don't see a lot of first overalls with his resume get moved so much, and then you really can't give him too much grief though, because with certain rosters he was on, what can he really do? So hopefully he's found his footing, at least in Carolina. Hopefully this season, and maybe seasons to come. Hopefully. So
right. So just wanted to extend my appreciation toward Taylor Hall and what he's been doing with Carolina. Now, the major storylines for the Devils has been their ability to overcome adversity. Let me explain. The Devils dealt with a few major injuries. One to Dougie Hamilton. He was projected to be out until the second round of the playoffs, and it's going to be difficult for the Devils to make it out of the first round, if I'm being completely honest. So I was just like, okay, maybe we should anticipate for Dougie Hamilton to miss the entirety of the season. He returned to action against the Red Wings just a couple days ago. It's nice that he got that game action shortly before the playoffs, just to get his legs back underneath him, to get his heart rate going a little bit. And he created a lot of offensive chances for the Devils. So getting him back, that's major. However, the Devils are still missing Jonas Siegenthaler, a solid lockdown defenseman. But the major one, Jack Hughes, getting season-ending shoulder surgery for the second straight season. We've always talked about how Jack can someday win the Hart Trophy, how he's a superstar in this league. I've had the chance to speak with some of his peers, including Austin Matthews, and they had nothing but good things to say about Jack Hughes. But the one issue that seems to always arise when it comes to Jack is his inability to stay healthy. So that really put a damper on the Devils. And come the trade deadline, everybody was expecting for Tom Fitzgerald to make a splashy move. I think they were in the running to possibly get Rantanen. I had my doubts, because I'm just like, there's no way the Hurricanes are going to help out the Devils, especially if the standings stay where they're at. The Hurricanes might have to play the Devils come the playoffs. There's no way they're going to help out the Devils in that sort of aspect. And lo and behold, here we are. So the Devils are dealing with a few injuries. They didn't really have that productive of a showing at the trade deadline. So a lot of people were down in the dumps. They were having their doubts when it came to the Devils. I said, look, all the Devils have to do is limp to the finish line. That's all they have to do. Just stay afloat. Don't go on any lengthy losing streaks. And since the trade deadline, They've had a record of 9-9-1, 500 hockey. Like I said, just play 500 hockey. That's all you need to do. And I'm going to factor out some of those recent losses that they suffered because they clinched a playoff spot a little more than a week ago. Yeah. So they kind of eased off the gas pedal a little bit. They rested a lot of their key guys against the Red Wings. And I know the Hurricanes rested a lot of their guys against the Canadians, which is why you guys kind of, ruined the Blue Jackets' chances of getting Just joking. Yeah. Just joking.
Oh, I know. Yeah, but like you said, Trey, it's the same thing. Like the Hurricanes have been doing the same thing over the last few games too. It's just that's the part of the season where if you're clinched and you need to rest some guys, rest them.
Right. So I don't think their record does it justice. If they hadn't clinched a spot, I think that record would have improved. But I've been very impressed with how the Devils have been able to rebound, and we'll talk more about this a little later in the episode. Mm-hmm. A lot of players, not just the star players like Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, and Timo Meier. A lot of role players have elevated their games since the trade deadline. I would also say that the Devils' power play has been excellent. It's the third best power play in the entire NHL, just below the Jets and Golden Knights. I think the Devils, just in special teams in general, that's been a big bright spot for them. Power play, PK, moving through the injuries that they've been dealing with, having guys elevate their games. I think those are some of the positive storylines heading into the first round against the Hurricanes, and the Devils need that sort of positive momentum.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's the one. Luckily for the Hurricanes, their PK's number one in the league. That's, second straight year in the, I think it's like 2 or 3 years now they've done that. It's just their power play was 10th at one point, was low as 27, and now I think they're sitting 25th. It's not great when, you were kind of hot for most of the season. Then when you hit December, it just, like winter, instantly just cooled off, and they never really, Taylor Hall kind of got a bad going to where you had 5 games in a row with the power play goal, but that's the one thing, Trey, that's going to be interesting. If this turns into a special teams battle, that's where I think the Devils might have a good edge on the Hurricanes. The fact that you guys can score on the power play and shut down as well, that's going to be tough sledding. But, if the Hurricanes can do, also shut you guys down too, that should definitely help. But for the Hurricanes, they got to hope this stays more 5-on-5 more than anything else. Because when you look at the Hurricanes, they're 8th in both goals for and goals allowed. So they do have that going for them, at least, is the fact that if you talk 5-on-5 hockey, that's kind of where their bread and butter is.
And you know what? Paul Bissonnette talked about it last season during the Devils' inconsistent year. The one bright spot for the Devils was their power play. And he said that's not sustainable. You can't just rely on your power play to do a boatload of the scoring. You need to be able to convert 5-on-5 goals. And unfortunately, the Devils weren't able to do so. Solid on the power play, even though it went ice cold at one point. Mm-hmm. But it's not enough. And similar to what you said, if the Hurricanes keep it 5-on-5 and maybe give the Devils like one power play opportunity, that can really hurt the Devils. I have the utmost faith in their PK. I have the utmost faith in their power play, but you can't just rely on special teams to carry you. But like I said, I'm using that as a positive talking point heading into the series because who knows, maybe it will come down to the special teams. The Devils, good on special teams. Hurricanes, they've had their struggles, with all due respect.
No, totally fair. The PK's doing great. Sometimes you almost call it a power kill because, like I said, you've got Seth Jarvis with 5 shorthanded goals. Even Sebastian Ah's got a couple as well, but you have their power plays in going right now. And I've been saying this a lot on Locked On Hurricanes. If you want to win playoff games, if you want to win playoff series, it's 2 things, Trey. We all know it. It's cliche, but it's true, though. How's your special teams doing, especially your power play? And can you win on the road? And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more later, too. But right now, if your power play is struggling, which the Hurricanes saw last year in round 2 against the Rangers, it will absolutely kill you if you can't score on the man advantage.
Oh, man, I am geared up for the playoffs. But before we continue with today's episode, let me tell you guys about Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to NHL 25. Love a good game of Shell. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. I'm a casual gamer myself. I love this device, and you will too. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, let's get back to today's episode with Zach Martin. Take it away once again. And I think this is the perfect transition to the next talking point, which is key players to watch. Like I said, the Devils have had some decent contributions up and down their lineup, especially with key assets, including Jack Hughes, Jonas Siegenthaler, and Dougie Hamilton sustaining long-term injuries. I want to start with you, Zach. Who are some key players to look out for in this series?
Well, I'd say if you're looking at someone who's had a really great season, who's like your all-around player, some would say Sebastian Aho because he does lead the team in points, does lead the team in assists. But I think if there's a guy who is a Swiss Army knife who can be someone that you have to every shift keep an eye on to make an impact, that's Seth Jarvis. Like I said, 32 goals, leads the team, 35 assists, which is a career high, and he tied his point total with 67 while playing in 7 fewer games because he re-aggravated his shoulder earlier this season after he suffered it last year and played like 60 games with it. And the thing too is he's second in power play goals with 7, 5 shorthanded markers as well, and like he does have 2 game-winning goals, which is a little bit down than what it was last year, but he's still someone who can go and do that on the PK, power play, 5-on-5. He even wins faceoffs too, and that's all 3 zones. Like if you're looking for a guy that Rod Brind'Amour wants to use in certain situations, that's him, and he can put him up anywhere on the lineup to get a line going. He is Brind'Amour's line spark starter. Like he's been with the Jordans of Martinook and Stahl. He's been on the first line with Aho and Blake, or Aho and Svechnikov, whoever you want to, even with Rantanen, he was up there too. So if there's a guy to keep an eye on that's going to make an impact game in and game out on all 3 phases of the ice and on special teams, that's definitely going to be Seth Jarvis. A guy who's really come out this year too. How about Taylor Hall? We talked about him a little bit, 18 goals, 40 points. Really came on with the Hurricanes since he came on with them. I think as of right now, he's since coming to Carolina from that trade, I think he's been playing in now 30 games. He's got 9 goals and 16 points. And that tied his Chicago total in 16 fewer games. And he's getting more ice time as well. And his shooting percentage, 14.8 with Carolina compared to 11 with Chicago. So you are seeing an uptick in Taylor Hall's game. And someone who's, I think, has had a really great year that no one's talking about, Jackson Blake. This kid's a rookie. Everyone's talking about Mishkov. Everyone's talking about Celebrini, which is fair, but you're overlooking a guy in Blake who's got 17 goals, 17 assists for 34 points. He's a plus 10 player. How about 5 power play goals and 6 game winners? There's a guy who's very underrated that no one's talking about as a rookie. And he started like on the 3rd line, 4th line. He's been playing top line minutes and top power play minutes for the last few months. So, Trey, who are your key players to watch for the Devils that Canes fans should keep an eye on?
Well, let's go with some of their key contributors. You mentioned underrated assets, always falls underneath the radar. Let's go with Jesper Bratt as main contributor for the Devils, because they're going to have to rely on him to generate a lot of points. Here's the thing. Jesper Bratt struggled in the 2023 playoffs. I'm really hoping now that he has that experience underneath his belt, he's able to redeem himself. Last year, he was an all-star. I think he had a good showing at the Four Nations tournament. In fact, no, I know he had a good showing. I saw it up close and personal. Did you know that Jesper Bratt broke the Devils record for most assists in a single season? Did you know that?
I actually did not know that. I know he's been having, he's a very underrated player, and I've talked to other Devils fans and knowing that his name always comes up. I actually did not know that. That is, it's pretty impressive for Jesper Bratt to pull that off. So big props to him.
Yeah, he broke Scott Stevens' single assist record, which also, I think people wouldn't have guessed Scott Stevens. He was a good offensive defenseman as well. He was very physical. Physical, but I think people would have went with like Patrick Elias or something like that because
one of those type of guys. Yeah, but
right. But anyway, digressing a little bit, Jesper Bratt appeared in 81 games and he produced 88 points. Another season in which he was averaging a point per game. My next person to look out for, he's going to be a finalist for the Selke Trophy, and honestly, he should win it. Nico Hischier. Sheldon Keefe has even said that he has given a lot of trouble to Nico in terms of like the amount of shifts he gives him. He hasn't given him an easy assignment. Nico is a Swiss Army knife. He does a little bit of everything. He does face-offs. He's good offensively, defensively, special teams, both power play and penalty kill. He's just the consummate professional. Nico, like I said, he's going to be a finalist for the Selke Trophy. I think the favorite to win it is Sasha Barkov, followed by Sam Reinhart, which I personally don't agree with just because they've been out with injury. And I get that Barkov has won it before. In fact, he's the reigning Selke winner. But I think Nico deserves a lot more credit for what he's been able to do offensively, defensively, face-offs, special teams, you name it. Nico has always been given the tough assignment, and he takes it on the chin. He goes about his business. He is the reason why, or he's a big reason why the Devils are in this position, and it should be no surprise why he's the captain. Another player to look out for is Luke Hughes, the younger brother of Jack Hughes. Ever since Dougie Hamilton and Jonas Siegenthaler went down with injuries, who's had to eat up some of those minutes? It's Luke Hughes. And he's also been producing a lot more points. We talked about earlier in the season how he improved defensively. Offensively, he was already good. Luke Hughes has elevated his game, and this sort of reminds me as to what happened in the same series, second round against the Hurricanes back in 2023. Ryan Graves goes down with an injury. It's Luke Hughes, fresh from the University of Michigan, who has to step into a much bigger role. And honestly, based on how he played in that series, he was one of the reasons why Ryan Graves was forced out of town, because the Devils were like, you know what? We're going to take a chance on Luke Hughes. He deserves a bigger role. He was good last season. He continues to be good this season. But my main talking point, my big player to look out for, what time is it, Zach?
Oh, is it Timo time? Is that where we're going?
It's Timo time, baby. Timo Meier. Ever since March 1st, in 21 games, Timo Meier has 11 goals, 4 assists for a grand total of 15 points. We call it Meier madness. Timo has elevated his game as the season progresses. Maybe it's because he's playing on the top power play unit. Maybe it's because he's playing at his more natural position, right winger. There's all sorts of speculation, but I don't really care. Timo is elevating his game when it matters most. So, yes, Jesper Bratt, we expect for him to put up the points. Nico Hischier, we already know he's one of the best two-way centers in the league. Luke Hughes, his future is bright. But Timo Meier, he's sometimes met with controversy among the Devils' discourse. You either love him or you hate him. There's no in between.
Yeah.
But Timo has really silenced a lot of the naysayers, and he's a big reason why the Devils were able to stay afloat since the trade deadline. Meier madness is what we called it during the month of March, and it's continued in April.
No, totally fair. I mean, it's definitely one guys you need to watch out for. So it'll really be interesting to see how it all plays down in this series. So I don't know. It'd be very interesting, that's for sure.
Before we close out today's episode and I share my predictions heading into this series, let me tell you guys about Game Time. The Stanley Cup Playoffs are here, and if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. Trust me. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer. With last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Yes, you heard me correct. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I've actually used Game Time before to purchase myself some MLB and NBA tickets. And with Game Time ticket coverage, I know I'm protected, whether it's cancellation protection, job loss insurance, or their 24-hour return guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What time is it? It's game time, everybody. All right, let's close out today's crossover episode alongside Zach Martin. Take it away once again. It's definitely going to be fun, and it's going to come down to, I believe, goaltending and physicality, which I guess this is now a good transition to the third and final segment. Do you have any notable stats, X factors, or predictions?
I'll say let's start with some X factors. And for me, I think one guy who, you talked about Nico Hischier for the Selke. I think this is another guy on the Kane side of things who should be definitely talked about for the Selke a lot more. And that's Jordan Staal. You're talking about a guy who is consistently put up against the best players in the league. You're looking at Crosby, you're looking at McDavid, McKinnon, all of that. And he's in the most recent NHL Players Association poll came out, and he was one of those guys that he is very tough to go up against, especially in the faceoff dot. How about for the fact that he continues his long streak since 2011-12, where he's won over 50% of his faceoffs. He's at 54.5% this season. And that's coming off of a 36-point year, which he hasn't done 36 since 21-22, but he's done it with 23 assists compared to 19. That's very impressive for the captain. Plus 15 on the season, almost 15 and a half minutes of ice time. And for the fact that he's shooting at 12.1%, which is an uptick from 8.1 last year. So if you're looking for an X factor to kind of be that guy to maybe slow down a Nico Hischier in the faceoff dot, and someone who might have to shut down a Jesper Bratt as well, don't overlook Jordan Staal to be kind of an X factor as a guy who is going to take the faceoffs when necessary. He's one of the big PK guys as well, and he can pretty much win a faceoff in almost every zone. I think that's someone to watch out for. Another X factor, I think it's what's going to help the Hurricanes is their speed and the fact they can roll all four lines. Because you look at Eric Robinson, massive season for him, career highs across the board in goals, assists, and points, which is 32, 11th on the team. And you compare that with Jack Roslovic, who also has speed. I think that's going to be a big factor as well. And with the Hurricanes in their transitional game, where you got Jalen Chatfield, who's got really good speed as well, Shane Goss to spare. Even Sean Walker's got sneaky speed as well. I think that transition from defense to offense and that structured play is really going to help out the Hurricanes in terms of how that's all going to go down. So I think with the speed, winning certain faceoffs and shutting down certain guys in situations of 5-on-5 play, because we talked about how the power play and penalty kill is kind of like the Devils' main thing right now. If you get some 5-on-5 and structured play out of the Hurricanes, I think that's going to be a massive thing as well. But Trey, for you, what are your kind of like X factors, notable stats that we're kind of looking at? Because I want to say my prediction until the very end, but what are you looking at as X factors for the Devils?
There's a lot here. Let's start with, I guess, the obvious. Dougie Hamilton and Jacob Markstrom. I just said that it's going to come down to physicality and goaltending. So for Jacob Markstrom, he's the last line of defense. And I think one of the issues that the Devils had in the 2023 playoffs was their goaltending. Akira Schmid, he was good in the first round against the Rangers.
Mhm.
However, come the Hurricanes series, he couldn't repeat that same magic. Vitek Vanacek was even worse. I don't even want to go into that one.
Yeah.
Vitek Vanacek was 10 times worse. So Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen, they have to be a strong duo in between the pipes. Dougie Hamilton, he creates offense for the Devils. I'm glad that he's back. Now, can he be back up to playoff speed? Because there's a difference between playoff speed and regular season speed. He doesn't really have time to like leisure his way through this. He's got to up the ante, and I know it's a lot to ask from him, but that's what it's going to come down to. Some other players that I want to highlight because depth is so essential. I think that's one of the reasons why the Devils beat the Rangers a couple seasons ago in 7. Eric Haula, former Hurricane, ever since the trade deadline, in 18 game appearances, he has 10 points, 6 goals, 4 assists, and he has a plus-minus rating of +5. Dawson Mercer, ever since the trade deadline, 19 games played, 6 goals, 4 assists for a grand total of 10 points. Everybody has been talking about Haula and Mercer and their lack of scoring. But I got to give credit where credit is rightfully deserved. They have stepped up their games since the trade deadline, which was dearly needed for the Devils. Paul Cotter, since the trade deadline, he has produced 3 goals. Not a lot, but Cotter went through a huge stretch in which he couldn't produce any points. And I'd say he has taken his game up a notch. He also has 245 hits this season, which is the most hits by a Devil in a single season. He broke a record in his first year with New Jersey.
Wow. Jeez. One-man wrecking crew, basically.
He brought the boom. Andre Palat, playoff P, as we like to call him. In 150 career playoff games, Palat has 101 points, 51 goals, 50 assists, and he has a couple of cups to his name thanks to his time with the Lightning.
Yeah.
So when looking at some of the not so big name players, those are some assets I wanted to highlight, and also worth mentioning. Ever since March 1st, the Devils have converted 15 out of 49 power plays, which is a 30.5% clip. And keep in mind, that's without Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton for a good amount of that stretch. So the fact that they were still good on the power play, despite not having Jack, their best player, and also Dougie, who creates offense, most of his points have come via the power play. It goes to show you how strong the Devils are on the power play. And I think another key thing that the Devils need to do is that they cannot trail after the second period. The Devils have a record of 1-23-2 when trailing after the third period this season. However, when leading after the second period, they have a record of 35-1-2. So they know how to close out games, but they don't know how to claw back into games, which is an interesting stat. So I think for the Devils, sometimes offense is going to be tough to come by. If you have a 1-goal lead after the second, you got to do whatever it takes to close it out. So like I said, they call him Mariano Rivera, play Enter Sandman, because they know how to close out a game. Baseball season, Zach, baseball season.
No, totally fair. Yeah, and the thing for the Hurricanes on the flip side, they always have a good first, always a good third. It seems like second period's been kind of their Achilles heel this season. So, like you said, if you're up on the Devils after 2, you might be in a good spot. But if you're behind them, it definitely should be very interesting. So it's, one of the things you got to watch out for. And I'll say this: if you're talking about you talk about the underlying guys who've been producing really well as of late. The Hurricanes just got William Carey back, who has won a cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. So he's been there and done that. And he's basically been throwing his body pretty much anything that's on skates since coming back. So if you're looking for a guy who's going to bring the physicality and bring that I don't give a care attitude, that will be William Carrier. And like I said, he's been there and done that. That's going to be another guy to watch out for who's, if you put him on that third line with the Jordans, you're talking about a very big boy heavy line that's going to be just throwing everything at you, plus the kitchen sink. So it should be crazy in terms of all the hits and physicality we're going to see between these two teams because they do not like each other.
No. I would say besides the Rangers, the team that gives the Devils the biggest headache in the Metro, like I said, can't reiterate this enough, besides the Rangers, so don't tweet at me, the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
So, it's these two teams don't like each other, and that's why the Devils poach some of the Hurricanes players away. So like Brett Pesce, Dougie Hamilton, Eric Haula, Stefan Nason, they've all come to New Jersey. I'm sorry, Zach. I couldn't
it's all good.
That one go.
No, it's all good. Hey, you know what? For Brett, he's kind of from around that area, and he got his contract that he wanted. Good for him. Can't blame the guy. If you want to get paid, you want to get paid. And same thing for Steph Nason. He kind of was earlier in his career, he was a Devil. Won a Calder with the Chicago Wolves in the AHL. We've loved him here in Carolina for the last few years. And, he was making, I think, less than $1 million, and he got his payday after a great year. Hey, congratulations to him. I know we definitely miss him on the power play because he was that dude, especially when you talk about playoffs, Trey. Greasy goals in front of the net, that's what he was good for. So
he's my favorite. He's my favorite person to interview. I'm a big fan.
He's so great. Yeah, just salt of the earth type of dude. Awesome to talk to. So no complaints there. But hey, you know what? It should definitely be very interesting for this. So before we wrap up, what is your prediction for this series?
All right. Well, the Devils are underdogs heading into this series, and I'm not going to bet against my own team that I cover. So I'll just say this. If all goes well, if Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen are good in between the pipes, if the Devils bring the physicality, and if they're able to get off to a good start, they're not a good first period team, but the second period, completely different story. If they're able to have a lead after the second period, I think the Devils can definitely muster out the series win in 6 or 7. Because they're good on the road and they're good at closing out games. Their goaltending is much improved. If the star players, Timo, Jesper, Nico, and Luke, can elevate their games and continue to play like they're playing, and some of the role players like Haula, Mercer, Cotter, Palat, Nason also hold their end of the bargain, I think the Devils can definitely upset the Hurricanes.
No, that's totally fair. And I think for the Hurricanes, if, as long as they don't go into a slog of special teams battles, if they, don't fall, I'm not saying this is the Devils, but fall into the trap of getting into the retaliation game and because the Hurricanes are a physical team, but they're not a team that's going to just throw bodies all game and stuff like that. So if they try to limit the Devils' opportunities on the power play and stick to more 5-on-5, I think this is like what we talked about earlier. That might hurt the Devils a little bit because, like you said, they're not a 5-on-5 team. So if the Hurricanes can keep it to more of an even strength game, I think they can figure out. Goaltending has been a little shaky for the Canes as of late, but also the team in front of them has been resting up a little bit. They've had some down games as well. So if you have a team that's sticking to their guns, play a full 60, and kind of help out their goaltenders, if goaltending kind of gets back to where they were in March, where they won 11 games back-to-back seasons, I think this is where the Hurricanes could. I'm not going to say they're going to steamroll the Devils. This will be a series. I think it'll be very interesting. I'm looking at more of, I see where you're coming out as a 6 or 7 series for the Devils. I'm looking at as if all goes well for the Canes, like how we should be, with basically almost everyone back healthy. Because I think they're still waiting. I think Cockney and Despair are both back, and then you just got William Carrier back. Full healthy team. Everything goes right. I think the Hurricanes could get this done in 5 or 6.
Well, we'll see what happens. It comes down to special teams, goaltending, physicality, and I think both teams are ready for a rematch from 2023. All right, Zach, best of luck to you, bud. Where can my audience find you at?
Yeah, of course. And obviously, thank you, Trey. It's been fun talking to you for the first time. This is a lot of fun. Big props to you for hosting this. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. Podcast is _Hurricanes. You can find us on all podcast platforms and on YouTube at Locked On Hurricanes. For my viewers, where can they find you, Trey, in the podcast?
You can find Locked On Devils wherever you get your podcasts from, both available on podcast streaming services and YouTube. You can follow me at TreyMatt4 on Twitter. And you can also catch some of my work on Fansided. I cover the Devils for Pucks and Pitchforks. That's where your audience can find me at. So, Zach, the pleasure has been mine, my friend. And like I do to close out every episode, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey and Carolina. Go Devils, go Hurricanes. I will catch you in the next episode of Locked On Devils. Zach will catch you in the next episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Thanks for listening once again.